you do that? How did you do that?
Welcome back everyone to another ESO build video. Today I'm going to be giving you the update to the burn build, the Magicka DK for the MurkMire DLC. And this is going to be sticking to the same theme as before, where we're going to be pumping out as much damage as we possibly can, alongside having survivability and sustain and all that good stuff, but based around using no trial loot whatsoever. Now, of course, you can use it if you want, and I will go over that in the gear section as to what you can or can't swap out, but this is basically set to be just dungeon or 4-man content stuff only, or even solo stuff. So first of all, we're going to go into the stats, pop a potion real quick. Now we're sitting on 45.6k max Magicka, which is massive, 863 recovery, 17k health and 10k stam, almost 10.7k stam. We are on 2.5k spell damage, but that will go up quite considerably, and I'll go over that in a bit. And we're sitting on 55.6% crit chance. We do need high crit chance because we're doing a lot of direct damage. We're using 64 points into max Magicka, so we've got nothing but Magicka points in here, no health or anything, but you can go into it if you want, if you feel a bit squish. And also we're using max health, max Magicka food, not Witch Mothers, and we're using the Thief Mundus Stone. Now, where we're going to go first of all is into the skills. I am going to explain everything in detail, including where they come from, what morphs you need, and then I'm going to go into the passives afterwards. You're more than welcome to skip this if you already know what you're doing, but if you do skip this, you risk asking questions in the comment section that have already been answered. If you do that, those questions obviously won't be responded to because it's already done in the video. Here we go. So, Burning Embers is your first major ability. This must be on the target at all times. This is a 10.5 second damage over time ability. It's in the Ardent Flame skill line. It's the second ability you unlock. Starts off as Searing Strike. You want to morph it to Burning Embers. Now what this does is a 17k damage over time over the 10 seconds, but obviously each tick can actually crit. This will do damage every 2 seconds. The initial hit does flame damage, of course, but then the dot carries on afterwards. Also, if you recast this, or if it runs out, or if it gets negated or purified or whatever, all the damage that has been done so far will be returned to you in the form of health for 75% of the damage done in total. So if you do 10k damage, you'll get 7.5k health back. So if you do 20k damage, you'll get 14k health back. It works like that. It's really, really, really strong. But it's very easy to take advantage of because all you need to do is this. Just once. Don't spam it because you'll just keep resetting it. But if you are in trouble and you want to claim back that heal, pop it again and you will heal instantly. It's really, really, really powerful. So if you're in trouble, you got really, really low health, this ability is already on. Reapply it and it will give you your health back and it will start the dot again. It's very, very powerful. That needs to be in your rotation at all times. Ignore all that fire and stuff. We'll get onto that later. Now, the next ability is Ramming Traps in a Fighters Guild skill line. Starts off as Trap Beast. It's the last ability in the skill line, and you will have to morph it to Rearming Trap. Now, what this does is it puts a trap down on the ground and immobilizes anybody caught inside of it. Of course, bosses can't be immobilized, but this will still affect them with the physical damage over time, which is a bit low because we're based on Magicka. But the main bonus for this is that while it's active, you gain minor force, increasing your critical damage by 10% the whole duration that it's running. However, this doesn't just last for 6 seconds. This also lasts for a further 6 because once it's finished, it rearms and reapplies again by itself. So it lasts actually 12 seconds. So all we need to do is put this underneath the target. 6 seconds later, that will pop again and we'll get the minor force buff again. So we keep it for a really, really good uptime. Keep that in your rotation all the time. Once every rotation is enough to give us a full uptime on that minor force buff. It's very, very important. Now, of course, you can use Race Against Time if you prefer, but you will struggle with your sustain because this costs stamina, whereas Race Against Time, or whichever morph you choose to take from the Sigil skill line, costs Magicka, and of course we have to be very careful with our sustain as a DK because we're using a lot of class abilities and they are expensive. So Beast Trap was much, much more optimal. Plus, in our passive, you'll see why this is useful for us because we can actually get stamina back in other ways if we struggle. Now, the next ability is Crushing Shock. This is in the Destruction Staff skill line. Now, this is the first ability to unlock. It's called Force Shock to start with. Morph it to Crushing Shock. This is here for multiple reasons. One, because in order to take advantage of your Destruction Staff passive, you must have a Destruction Staff skill on your bar. At least one. So we have to have this somewhere. You can have any of these skills you want, really, but except for Wall of Elements, because it's on the back bar. But you can have this, you can have Destructive Clench, you can have Ellie Drain if you really want to, you can have Impulse, you can have anything you want. But this is very, very useful. Not only is it there for passives, but this has 28 meters range. And this not only hits the target for 3 different elemental effects, but it also interrupts the target. So you don't have to bash the target like this all the time and drain all your stamina if you want to interrupt it. You can actually just hit another magic ability and away you go. However, also at range, we're going to get to our main spammable in a moment. Little spoiler, it's a whip. Obviously, if you already know that, then you saw it coming. But that's close range. Now, if we're weaving in and out of mechanics and we've got to move really far backwards, we can't use our spammable anymore. So what do? We use this instead while we're coming back in, and then when we get there, we get back onto the whip again. So when you're close range, you use your main spammable. When you're long range, trying to weave in and out of mechanics, or as you're on the way in, you can still use that as a ranged interrupt or as a ranged DPS skill on the fly. So it's very, very useful indeed. Now, the next ability is Inner Light. This is in the Mage's Guild skill line. You'll need Mage's Guild level 2 for this, and you want to morph it from Mage Light to Inner Light. Now, while this is on our bar, we gain 2191 crit chance, or crit rating, which is actually 10%. And also we gain a 5% bonus to our maximum Magicka, which is obviously very beneficial to our light, heavy attacks, and also our main skills. So the more Magicka, the better. That's pretty standard stuff. You don't really need to do anything with it. Just leave it on your bar. Don't even activate it. You don't have to. If you do, you will grant yourself Empower from one of the Mage's Guild passives, which I'll go over in a bit, but you don't actually have to activate it at all. The only other bonus for it is actually for PvP, decloaking invisible enemies, but we won't be using it for that. Now, our main spammable, which we've already had a spoiler of, is in our Ardent Flame skill line. It is Flame Lash. Morph from Lava Whip to Flame Lash, and yes, this is done on purpose. This particular morph of it whips the target for single target damage, flame damage in fact, as you just saw. But if you strike an enemy that is immobile or stunned, you set them off balance. Most bosses can't be done with that. It's trash stuff that can, because bosses can't obviously be immobilized or stunned, but trash can, and this will make your secondary effect come into play. However, enemies that can't be immobilized or stunned or anything like that can still go off balance via the concussion and wall of elements effect. So once every 20 seconds for 5 seconds with a 15-second gap, every single boss is capable of having that off balance uptime, so you can take advantage of this whip. Now what happens is when the enemy is off balance, trash or not, trash or boss or whatever, you have a period of time where you can take advantage of a cheaper whip, which does more damage, it heals you over 2 seconds, and you can use this particular cheaper whip once every 3 seconds. Now, off balance lasts for 5. So if you hit this bang on time, when off balance hits, you fire off your first whip. You can fire off a couple more, you're counting down from 3 seconds now, because it's got a cooldown. Off balance has still got 2 seconds left, you can get in another one. In our rotations, when I get to it later on, because this may sound confusing, with a 3-second cooldown and a 5-second uptime of off balance itself, this ability can fire twice on our front bar rotation during any off balance period. Before it was a little tricky, but now we can fire 2 guaranteed as long as we time it just right. However, this is an extremely useful ability, not just as your main spammable, not just as a really good heal as well, but when it does go off balance and it is cheaper, you will hit a lot harder. It's very, very strong indeed. I will get to that when we go to the rotations. You'll see how effective it is, but for now, that's our main spammable. There is another morph for it, which increases your Ardent Flame abilities by a set amount of spell damage, but this one actually on this particular build outperformed by quite a lot. And in dungeons or trials, things go off balance a lot, if you've got all the shiny stuff with you anyway. Now, the next ability is Shooting Star. Now, this is actually in the Mage's Guild skill line. It's level 10 you need for this. Now, the reason we're using Shooting Star instead of Ice Comet, not only is it because we are using flame damage predominantly, and of course our racial passives benefit to that, which I'll get to later, this also gives us ultimate for each enemy hit. Now, this is not something that I would encourage you to use often. In fact, I wouldn't use this at all unless you are in an oh shit situation where you don't have enough ultimate to fire your backbar ulti, and you are in trouble and you need some resources, or the enemy is just about dead. Backbar, Absorb Magicka. Light Armor skill line starts off as Annulment. You want to morph it to Harness Magicka. Now, damage shields were changed in MurkMire quite considerably, but not necessarily for the worst. This is an almost 7k damage shield and is capped at our max health. So the higher health you have, in fact, the higher shield you can get because of the percentage that it covers. But before, if for example you had a 10k damage shield and you were hit for 10,000 damage, it would take your shield off. You would lose it all. It would be quite nasty because they didn't cover resistances. But now damage shields do consider your resistance first. So if for argument's sake we had a 10k damage shield and we had 20k mitigation, 20% mitigation, sorry, then the incoming 10k hit to your 10k shield would only hit you for 8. So you still have some shield left. It makes a big difference to overall mitigation, as well as the fact that damage shields do stack as well. So the more damage shields in your group, the better. If you've got stuff like Lunar Bastion, Igneous Shields, Bone Shields, this shield as well, and someone popping Magma Shell for God knows what reason, it's very hard to get through to your health. So although the overall damage shield itself is lower in flat stats, it does count your resistances first, and it does really count. Now also, this particular morph, by the way, does absorb magic abilities. So if you get hit with spell damage, so long as it doesn't take the whole shield off, you can actually get hit 3 times and get 1270 magic back every time. If you get hit once and it strips your shield, you'll just get it once. If you get hit for several light attacks or whatever and it doesn't take the whole shield away, each hit will actually absorb Magicka up to 3 times. So it's really helpful. You're going to need this as your oh shit button as well. So if you do get in trouble, pop on a shield and then just get a heal from yourself, or keep doing your rotations, whatever you've got to do. But this will coat your health bar, it will count your resists, and you'll mitigate the incoming damage. The next ability on the back bar is Elemental Blockade, which is started off as Wall of Elements. It's a second ability in the Destruction Staff skill line. It's called Elemental Blockade to start with, but it's called Blockade of Fire for us because we're using a Flame Staff. The element that you have applied to your weapon, so if it's a Flame Staff, a Lightning Staff, or a Frost Staff, the different elements call it different things. That changes the name of the skill because they have different effects. But this particular one looks like this. Anything caught in this will take damage over time every 1 second. Also, anything in here that catches fire, basically, and has a burning status effect applied to it, will take 20% more damage from the ability as well. Burning status effects do also add a damage over time, a single target damage over time to the target as well. So that will obviously increase your damage even more. So if they do catch fire, you will hurt them a lot more. But this is one of those abilities that must be down on the ground all the time. Remember, Beast Trap's got to be down all the time. Our single target dot has to be up all the time. And our Wall of Elements have to be down all the time. 9 times out of 10 I call that Wall of Elements. I know it's Blockade, but it starts off as Wall of Elements, so that's Force of Habit. Next ability is Engulfing Flames. This is an Ardent Flame skill line. The third ability you unlock starts off as Fiery Breath and is morphed into Engulfing Flames. It looks like this. Free fire. Perfect. Now, what this does is this will apply a damage over time effect in the form of flame damage to any enemies caught in front of you. So it's a conal effect, and any enemies like this, or even here, will still get him, or even here, you can still get him with it. As long as you catch people inside that conal effect, you will set them on fire for 10 seconds. This is a damage over time that has to be applied once every 10 seconds. Don't spam it. However, this is also a very big bonus to it. Affected enemies, so however many there are, also take 10% more damage from all fire attacks. So your flame damage, including this particular skill, and everybody else's flame damage will go up by 10%. It's absolutely essential that you keep this on a target at all times. Remember, Elemental Blockade, or Wall of Fire, or Wall of Elements, whatever you want to call it. This, if it catches fire to enemies, if they have a burning status effect, will increase the damage by 20%. This also counts towards that. This will also increase the damage of this skill because it is fire. Same goes for your whip, same goes for your burning embers. Everything is fire. Everything will get improved. Next ability is Flames of Oblivion. This is also in the Ardent Flame skill line. It's the 5th ability you unlock. You need to start it off as Inferno, of course, and then morph it into Flames of Oblivion. This is a single target ability that has a duration, but it fires in a single attack once every 5 seconds for 15. So you get 3 hits out of it, not including the initial. So you get a fire. I'll aggro him first. There's 1 there when you first cast it. Then when it goes to 10 seconds, there's 2. When it goes to 5 seconds, there's 3. And then when it gets to 0, it will fire again when it's finished. So you actually get 4 hits out of it, including the initial. Now, this scales off your maximum resources, so the The higher your stamina, the more damage it will do. The higher your Magicka, the more damage it will do. Whichever one of the two pools is highest. Obviously, we're a Magicka build, so we've got loads and loads of Magicka, so that's one it will scale off for us. Now, also, while slotted, this will give you Major Prophecy, which is the same as Inner Light. So we have the crit bonus, the 10% increased crit chance on both bars. This does give you Savagery as well, which is based on your weapon crit, but we don't use physical weapons, so that's not even relevant. However, that can actually make your Beast Trap crit a little bit more often. It's not massive, but it does contribute to a small amount of extra damage, so why not? It's free anyway. But this, again, must be on your bar at all times. If you can't get to grips with a rotation and you are struggling trying to fit this in, which I'll get to in a moment, you can, of course, just double bar Inner Light, wherever the hell it's gone. You can just double bar this and you never have to activate it, and you have the max magic bonus actually on both bars. Obviously, as you can see, we don't have the 5% magic bonus on this bar because we only have the skill slotted once. But if you want it, you can put this in place of it instead. The damage is not that much different, but this will obviously be a little bit more. Now, the last ability is Eruption. This is an Earth and Heart skill line, before we get to the ultimate, that is. Starts off as Ash Cloud. You want to morph it to Eruption. If you morph it the other way, it will be a heal, not a damage over time. Now, this puts a nice cloud on the ground with a massive duration. It's 18 seconds long, and anything inside of here, we'll demonstrate it, takes fire damage every second. It's really, really fast-paced damage over time. It hits really, really hard, and alongside your Flame Breath and your Wall and your Burning Embers, you have a lot of damage over time firing right now, and all you have to do is keep up your whips inside of it. Rotation's coming, but keep these dots down, all of them, at all times. That way, your spam ball can fill the gap in between. Don't forget, of course, Engulfing Flames does boost this because it's flame damage, and also Flames of Oblivion is boosted by it as well, as is everything else. Everything that we do is flame damage, so our light attacks, our heavy attacks, all of our abilities, everything is fire. Finally, Standard of Might. Now, this is in the Ardent Flame skill line. You need level 12 to unlock this. He starts off as Dragonknight Standard, and you want to morph it into Standard of Might. This is 250 ultimate. It's extremely expensive, but you must use this all the time, unless, like I said, with Shooting Star, it's an oh shit situation where you're almost out of resources or the boss is almost dead and you're not going to have enough time to get one of these. This will do a huge amount of fire damage once every second for 17 seconds, which is also boosted by Engulfing Flames. It does apply Major Defile to the target, which is not necessarily relevant for PvE. But while standing inside the banner, all of your damage, whether it's already running and gets boosted by the banner landing, or you apply damage afterwards, doesn't matter. Any damage that is done by you is increased by 15%, and also any damage that you take is reduced by 15%. So you are tankier, and you hit like a steam train. Also, if allies are nearby and you drop this, they can activate a synergy which will do really, really high flame damage in area of effect in one big burst and actually pin or immobilize targets to the banner for 5 seconds. It's really, really good CC for the group, and it's massive damage for you. And it looks like this. One of those. Whichever alliance you are is whichever banner will appear. Yes, I'm Ordinary Dominion, no comments, thank you. And any damage that you do will be boosted as long as you stay in here. Anything inside of it will also catch fire and get nasty damage over time as well. But the trick to this ability is, based on your resource gain, which is coming up in the passives also, is don't just drop the banner and then start doing a rotation. Get halfway through first, make sure you got plenty of abilities down, make sure your dots are on, and then drop it, because everything already running will get boosted. Otherwise, you drop the banner and it's a blank and nothing's running, and you're wasting all that time putting dots down rather than just reapplying the ones that you need to. Makes a big, big difference to your overall performance, and of course, when we get to the passives, your sustain as well. Speaking of which, passives are now up. So, Ardent Flame skill line. Combustion increases the damage of your burning and poison status effects by 50%.
I love winnings. Drinks
It's
all
Captain
around.
Jack. Now, anything that is affected by fire has a chance to get set on fire, basically, and have a burning effect applied to it, which is a single target damage over time. As a Dragon Knight, your burning status effects are 50% more effective in terms of damage. Plus, if you do apply burning to a target, you will restore 500 Magicka once every 5 seconds. It's really, really, really good for your sustain and your damage output. You need to get this passive as soon as. This one here, when you deal direct damage with any Ardent Flame ability, you will reduce the enemy's movement speed by 30% for 3 seconds. It's not massive in PvE, but it will contribute a little bit, especially when the tanks are trying to CC everything and kind of grab it and it's all running around really, really fast. This will help, so get that. Increases the duration of your Fiery Breath, Searing Strike, and Dragonknight standard abilities by 2 seconds. That is in Burning Embers, that is Engulfing Flames, and your banner. Each one of them is increased by 2 seconds, so instead of lasting 8 apiece for these 2 dots and 15 for this, it lasts 17 and 10 and 10. So that really helps as well. Get those. Also, it does increase their damage as well by a further 3%, so make sure you get this as soon as possible. Increases the damage of your Flame Area of Effect abilities by 6%. Now, this is very important towards our Breath, our Wall of Elements, our Eruption, and of course our Standard. Every single one of them is a flame ability that is area of effect. It's very, very, very strong indeed. A lot of people think that mostly the DK is based on single target. They are very capable of pumping out a lot of AoE as well. It's really, really important that you get this skill. Now, Draconic Power, we're not really using any of these at all. If you need a resistance buff at some point, and of course you can buy this and then slot it in Flames of Oblivion instead, you'll lose a little bit of damage as far as this is concerned, but you will obviously benefit from the high resist if you need to. You could also use Inhale in some situations and morph that to Deep Breath, so you can actually area of effect interrupt things at close range if you need to, and also that can go in the same slot. But they're not hugely essential overall for this particular setup at this point. So that's a kind of flex slot if you need it. But you will need the passives. Increase the amount of damage you can block by 10%. You will be blocking. You want to make sure you can mitigate more damage. And of course, increases your spell resistance by 3299. Those two are very, very important. These two, however, are not, because we're not using any Draconic Power abilities. But like I said, if you do use one of those abilities, if you do need a resist buff or something like that, then I would encourage you to take this one, because maxed out, this will actually give you a 12% increase to any healing that you receive from your abilities and others for slotting, or sorry, activating a buff. So if you have this resist buff on all the time, you won't only just get the resistance for it, but you'll also get the heal and receive bonuses as well. Again, most situations you probably won't need it, but if you choose to, you can put some points into these skills. Earth and Heart is essential. Now, increase the duration of your Earth and Heart abilities by 20%. Our Eruption is Earth and Heart. It lasts 18 seconds due to this passive. This one here, when you cast an ultimate, you will restore 46 health, magic, and stamina for every ultimate point cost. That's very, very important, and that is why we use our most expensive ultimate that we have to hand. Not only because it's very, very powerful in terms of damage output and mitigation, but also because the more points it costs, the more resources we get back. And this is also towards our sustain as well. Don't just drop a banner at full Magicka, because you just now gained nothing. You are full. What was the point? So what you do, you put all your dots down, you waste a load of your resources by applying damage, and then you drop the banner and get it all back. That way you are much, much more efficient with your sustain and your overall damage output. Of course, like I said, this is a no shit button, Shooting Star. It's 200 ultimate, so it is cheaper than Standard and Might, but in a situation where your resources are really, really low, or you're about to die, or maybe, for example, the boss is almost dead, you don't have enough to fire the banner, you can, of course, use this, and you will still get 200 points worth of 46 per stat back. It's very, very important to pay attention to how that works. This is also very important. When you cast an Earth and Heart ability, you and your group gain minor brutality for 20 seconds, increasing your weapon damage by 10%. This is important for those stamina users out there. If a Dragonknight in your group is using any Earth and Heart ability, Igneous Shields, Eruption, Molten Armaments, whatever their benefit, you will still get this as well for 6 people. This used to be 5%, it's now 10% in MurkMire, and this will be actually kept up pretty much all the time if you have a clean rotation. You can have 100% uptime on this bonus for you and your group. You won't necessarily need it, but they will. Now, of course, if you're a Stam DK, this benefits you quite a lot. If you're a Mag DK, it's more for everybody else. Also, every time you activate an Earth and Heart ability, you will gain 3 ultimate as long as you are in combat once every 6 seconds. We're actually going to use this once every 2 rotations because it's quite a long duration, but every time that we do apply it, we will actually get that ultimate back as well, which is really, really awesome because we need to make sure we have as much ultimate as possible in order to keep our sustainer. Now, this is also very important. When you cast an Earth and Heart ability, you restore 990 stamina. Now, of course, when you are using Beast Trap quite a lot, regardless of your recovery, you are going to use stamina. and that can be quite stressful, especially in block situations. But when we're on the back bar and we cast this, we get stamina back. So Beast Trap down, stamina back for using a magic ability. We're almost full already. Now, obviously, you don't gain stamina back from your base recovery while you're blocking. But if you're running really, really low, cast this a couple times and your stamina comes back. And because we're Magicka based anyway, we can spend a little bit more than this than most stam DKs can, because we can actually spam it to some extent and get our juice back. That is in an oh shit situation. Also, if you're sprinting around and you run out of juice and you're not going to have enough to do what you need to do, pop a couple of these really quick in a place where it's not going to be negative to yours group, and you can get stam back from it. It's very, very important to understand these Earth and Heart passives. They're really, really strong. Now, destruction stuff. Of course, you want to get every single one of these without fail. They are so important. This one, fully charged flame staff, heavy attacks, deal an additional 12% damage. But you must have, obviously, a Destrous staff equipped, otherwise you can't get the bonus for it. But different types of staves will give you different bonuses. Flame staff gives you 12% additional damage. It's really, really important, but you must have a skill on your bar to benefit from it. This also, your destruction staff abilities ignore 10% of the enemy's spell resistance. So your light, your heavy attacks, your wall of elements, your crush and shock ignores their resistances by 10%. Increases your chance to apply the burning, concussion, and chilled status effects by 100%. Now, that's not a 100% chance to do it. It's not a 100% chance to set them on fire with a burning status effect, but it's a 100% chance from the base. So this improves your chance of applying the burner status effect for having a staff equipped, and also, of course, remember that gives us Magicka back once every 5 seconds, and we have an increased 50% damage to burning status effects. So pay attention to this one, make sure you get it. This is very important. While a destruction staff is equipped, make sure you have an ability slotted, by the way. You must have a destruction staff ability slotted. Your flame staff increases your damage done with single target abilities by 8%. Now, single target abilities, the whip, crush and shock, burning embers, and of course Flames of Oblivion, all are single target abilities, and they do benefit from this 8% bonus to damage for having a flame staff. It's very, very important to note that. Also, when you kill an enemy with a destruction staff ability, you restore 3600 Magicka. So if you kill them with a light attack, a heavy attack, wall of elements, or crush and shock, you will actually get magic back. Now, light armor is very obviously important, but the more light armor you're wearing, the more benefits you get from some of these bonuses. But we're using 5 pieces on purpose. This will reduce the effectiveness of snares applied to you by 20%. This will increase your mag recovery by 20% and reduce the cost of your abilities by 10%. This will improve your resistances to spell resistance, and this will increase your spell crit rating by a further 10% on top of everything we've already got. Finally, of course, this increases our spell penetration by 4884. This basically ignores 4,884 resistance of the target. Medium armor, we're using 1 piece. All you need here is Windwalker for the 4% increased recovery and reduction to stamina costs, because we are using 1 stamina ability. And this here as well, you do want to get the max level of this. This will actually give you a 4% reduction to dodge roll, although for some stupid reason I didn't have enough skill points to finish it. Heavy armor, make sure you get the first 3. This one will give you a small bonus to resistances. This will give you 108 Magicka and stamina back once every 4 seconds just for being hit. And you will get a 2% bonus as well. Now, these are based on how many pieces of heavy you are wearing. So the more you're wearing, the stronger it is, obviously. We're wearing 1, so we can take these minor bonuses. Vampire, yes, of course, we're a stage 4 vampire. We have an increased Magicka and stam recovery bonus for 10% for stage 2 or higher. I'm a stage 4 all the time. And this reduces the damage taken by up to 33% based on your missing health while under 50%. So the lower your health, the tankier you get. This is very, very strong indeed. Now, our health recovery isn't really that important, especially as a vampire, because we get it reduced anyway, but this does lessen the severity of the reduction to health recovery you have as a vampire, so you might want to get this as well. It's a tiny bonus, but it does help. Fighters Guild, you are going to need 2 of these. Intimidating Presence, of course, this will actually reduce the cost of your Fighters Guild abilities. So Beast Trap is stamina, it is expensive, reduce the cost. And Banish the Wicked is very, very important. You generate 9 ultimate when you kill an undead, Daedra, or werewolf. So if you get the kill and blow, you get 9 ulti back. And the more ulti we get, the better, obviously, because we can use them more often. We can get more sustain back, and the Earth and Heart passives is very important to keep your ultimate up. Mages Guild. Level 10, I do have, I'm afraid. You don't have to have this. You can use Magma Shell here instead for oh shit moments, and you go immortal for 10 seconds. But if you do have Mages Guild 10, this is very, very handy indeed for a couple of really important passives. One of them is this, which increases the maximum magic bonus and your Magicka recovery bonus by 2% for each ability slotted. Now this is 1, so this counts as 2% on top of the 5 you already get for the skill, and this counts as 2, so this is another 2%. So we've got 4% bonus there just for having those 2 abilities slotted. Remember, if you do slot in a light on the back bar instead of Flames of Oblivion, you will get the 5% plus the 2 on the back bar as well, if you want, but that's entirely up to you. If you can't get to grips with the rotation, just make it simple on yourself and just put that on both bars. Undaunted is very, very important. Make sure you get these 2 passives and max them out as soon as you can. This will give you 4% of your maximum resources, health, stamina, and magic back every single time you take a synergy. No cooldown whatsoever. Every synergy does have a 20-second cooldown per synergy for each different one. But if you take 7 different ones in a row, you'll get 4% for every single one you took. There's no cooldown between the synergies. You can take all of them, as long as they're still present and someone else hasn't taken it or it hasn't moved. This is very, very important for your sustain and for your survivability. And of course, every synergy is beneficial. It will heal, it will shield you, it will do damage, it will pin stuff, it will immobilize things. There's loads and loads of different synergies in the game. They're all beneficial. Take every single one you can while keeping on top of your rotation. Increases your max health, stamina, and magic by 2% per type of armor worn. If it wasn't already clear, we are using 5 pieces of light armor, which is 1 type. We're using 1 piece of medium, which is 2 types. We're using 1 piece of heavy, which is a 3rd type. So we get 6% across the board. 6% increase to all of our stats. Now, if we just look at Magicka, for example, we've got 6% there, 5% there, another 2% for being on the bar, another 2% here. I think you can see where we're going with this. We have a massive magic pool. It is huge. Support. If you are in Sanctum or Phidia, your raid leaders will probably tell you to slot Siege Shield, because it's really expensive and you can get rid of your magic really, really quickly. Failing that, you might have to spam something like this, but that's not important for now. Just unlock this and spend a skill point in it if you are required to. You might have to. Or just spam something really expensive. We are a Dark Elf. Of course we're a Dark Elf. Increases your max magicka and stamina by 6%, so both bars are full. And again, another magic bonus. Also increases your max magicka bonus again by a further 3%, and we are resistant to flame. We actually have a small flame resistance bonus, and to add to that, we are immune to burning status effects. So yes, we can get hit with fire, but no, we can't actually be hit with a burning status effect. A Dark Elf are immune to it. And also the last one increases your flame damage by 7%. All damage that we do is flame, and all of it is improved not only by our Destro passives, but as being a Dark Elf as well. We have a 7% increase to all of it. Also, our Frost and Shock is improved by 2% as well. Finally, medicinal use. One of the most important skills in the game, in my opinion. If you max this out, there'll be an alchemy guide in the description, by the way, where you can level up alchemy really, really fast. Dump all your points once you've hit level 50, and then just buy this passive with 3 points. We are using spell pots, which give us crit bonus, that give us a spell damage bonus in the form of major sorcery, and we also get recovery in the form of major intellect. Now, these would normally last about 36 seconds in the form of crafted potions. I'll show you where they are actually. But with medicinal use, they actually last 47. So if you look here, you can see we get major sorcery, 20% increase of spell damage, 47.6 seconds alongside major prophecy, which yes, we do have on both bars anyway, so that's already covered. And of course, major intellect plus magic back. That uptime and the cooldown are against each other. Our uptime is longer than the cooldown, which means we can keep these up 100% of the time. Really, really important if you can slot these. Failing that, if you are struggling with getting potions, you don't have enough money for them, you can't make them, you don't have any around, whatever, you can, of course, slot Molten Armaments here, which is in the Earth and Heart skill line. You can put Molten Armaments on, which will give you and 5 other people major sorcery for 40 seconds almost, and you just activate this every so often when you need to, plus it will increase your heavy attack damage. You will have to sacrifice Flames of Oblivion for it, and you will lose a bit of damage, but it actually does allow you to still keep that uptime on the buff. But I would highly recommend the potions, and definitely get that passive. Now we're going to go into the gear. First of all, you can get this in normal dungeons. You don't have to go on vet. In fact, everything I'm now going to show you can get in normal dungeons except for the monster helmet and except for the back bar weapon. The main 2 sets can be done on normal. First off, Burning Spell with Inferno Staff in Sharpened with an increased weapon and spell damage glyph on the front bar only. You want it on the front bar only because alongside the max magic, spell damage and spell crit bonuses, when you deal flame damage or damage with a flame ability, you have a 15% chance to apply a burning status effect on the enemy. If you do this, you will increase your spell damage by 525 for 8 seconds with a 12-second cooldown. So there's a 4-second gap. The reason we have this on our front bar only is because we want to make sure this fires on our front bar rather than on our back. The last thing you want to do is fire off your whips, which are really, really powerful. We need some food. You don't want to fire off your whips, which are really, really powerful, and have no bonus, and then go to the back bar and all of a sudden it starts firing. Because by the time you go to the front, your duration is going to run out. Now, yes, obviously it does stagger somewhat occasionally because of the awkward cooldown and the awkward timing of some of our dots, but the majority of the time this will proc on our front bar only, and that is why we want it only there. You need 5 pieces of this, but because staves take 2 pieces, you actually just need a staff and 3 parts of Burning Spellweave. Now, the back bar is the Maelstrom Inferno staff. If you do not have this, or you don't have access to it, or you haven't achieved it yet, do not panic. You can, of course, use another staff in its place. You can put maybe a willpower flame staff on the back, or a 2-piece crafted version. It's entirely up to you. So Turok's Pact, Julianus, whatever you fancy. But willpower is probably one of the stronger ones because it's got the 1,400 extra magical bonus just for slotting it. It's really, really handy. But you want either way your back bar staff to be infused with a flame damage glyph. If you're struggling with sustain, you can put an absorb magic glyph on the back bar instead, and that will proc all the time while Wall of Elements is firing. Every 3 seconds it will fire, giving you that magic back. It's really, really handy. But if you're not struggling with sustain, flame damage all the way. Deliberately infused, as I said already. And by the way, this bonus for the Maelstrom weapon actually increases your light and heavy attacks for any enemies caught inside the Wall of Elements. So this is why this is so important to keep this down. Not only for the burning effects and all the extra damage, but anything caught inside of this will be hit harder by your light and heavy attacks, and there is a nasty stack and bonus in there as well, especially when things are off balance. Full heavy attack of an off balance target will be increased by 70% flat out, and it stacks with the Maelstrom weapon as well. So timing is key. If anything is off balance and you're struggling with your sustain, do a full heavy attack. You'll get a 70% increase to the overall damage. You'll stack it with this and you'll get double resources back. It's very important to understand how heavy attacks in off balance work. Increased damage, double resources. Don't always have to do it, of course, because our whip is beneficial during off balance because it does more damage and gives us heals, but depends on the situation. If you're running low, keep your eyes peeled. Now the second set is Destruction Mastery. This is from Dragonstar Arena. You do not have to do it on vet, you can do it on normal, and you don't even have to go in there, you can buy off the market. So this drops in City of Ash 1 and 2. Kill all adds, loot all chests. It doesn't just drop from the last boss. And this drops throughout Dragonstar Arena. Now what this does is gives us a max magic bonus, it gives us spell crit, it gives us spell damage, and while you have a destruction staff equipped, your maximum magic, remember all those stacking bonuses we have, is increased by 2.4k. So we have a massive, massive mag pool, so we can do a lot of damage from our lights, our heavies, and our skills. Now this must be on your body and or jewelry throughout. You mustn't have this in your weapon because when you swap bars, you're going to lose a massive amount of magicka. So we have this on our front bar, and we have this on us all the time. Now the body pieces and the jewelry can be in any order as long as your front bar staff is the Burning Spellweave one. Now, as far as traits are concerned, the heavy pieces, or the larger pieces, sorry, not heavy, the chest, the legs, and the helmet need to be infused. Everything else needs to be divines. Going on to our monster set, we have Groftar. Yes, of course, you can use Zahn if you have access to it, but just consider the fact that Zahn is single target, and you will lose AoE damage by replacing it. And sometimes it doesn't proc as often as you might like. It does proc a lot, it does fire off a lot, but in multiple tests on a 3 million target dummy, on average, you get around 15 ticks. But if you're very, very lucky, sometimes 2 times out of 10, you might get 18 and show some shinier numbers. But the choice is yours. This gives you a max magic bonus, and when you deal damage, you have a 10% chance to create a circle around you doing damage every second for 5 seconds. In 8 meter radius. It's really, really, really powerful, and that's that flame wall you keep seeing around me, or the big circle. See that there? The big circle? That there, anything inside of it will take damage. Area of effect as well is really, really powerful. If you wanted to, you can switch to Zahn. This does give you a crit bonus instead of a magical bonus, so your actual crit chance goes up a little bit, but your max magic will go down. And when you deal damage with a light or heavy attack, you can actually have a 20% chance to make a flame beam attach between you and the target, and it will continuously do damage for 5 seconds. But every 1 second, the damage will be increased by 50%. Make sure you don't go out of 8 meters range, however, because if you do, it will break. The cooldown on this, however, is 18 seconds. So it's 5 seconds up, 13 seconds down. It's quite long. But the choice is yours. It's entirely up to you. If you want to go full out single target and nothing else, Xan's probably best for you. But if you want to have a mixture between single target and AoE, Grofdar's very, very, very close. There's only about 1k in it. It's very, very close indeed. Especially since Grofdar tends to proc pretty much all the time, and Xan can have some occasional lucky up times and a quite low average downtime. It depends. But the choice is yours, like I said. It depends on what content you're playing as well, because Grofdar's quite easy to get in Vaults of Madness, whereas Xan requires you to do Scale Caller Peak. Now, this needs to be, of course, in heavy and medium. In any order, this could be heavy or medium, this could be heavy or medium, but you must have one of each. Infused on the head, medium on the shoulders. Fused on the head, divines on the shoulders. Now, jewelry, as far as traits are concerned, we have 2 arcane and 1 bloodthirsty, with spell damage on every single one. The reason we have a bloodthirsty one is because all damage that we do under 25% health will actually do 10% more damage. So we actually have some execute power as well, just by sticking to our rotation. It's very, very strong indeed. So to recap, sharpened on purpose, burning spell with Inferno Staff, Maelstrom infused weapon on the back bar, Grofdar on the head and shoulders, or Xan if you prefer, and destruction mastery everywhere else. Now, champion points. Then I'm going to go through the rotation and show you an example. First of all, the red and green is fairly standard, to be fair. 72 points in Ironclad, reducing the incoming damage from direct attacks. 64 points in Hardy, 64 points into Elemental Defender, and 51 into Thick Skin. Now, these are obviously to give us a nice balanced bonus across the board for all types of damage, but certain trials may warrant you to change the locations of certain skills and bonuses depending on what you're up against. Also, pay attention to this. Unchained is a very, very overlooked passive. If you break free with your stamina, which you do, for the next 5 seconds, any stamina ability you use will be reduced in cost by 80%. So if you do break free from something and you're midway through your rotation, break free first, Beast Trap straight afterwards. It'll be cheap as hell. Now, 19 points into quick recovery will give us a 5% bonus to healing received, which means any heals that we do for ourselves or anyone that heals us will be improved on our own health bar by 5%. So it's really, really handy. But above all, for having 10 points in this tree, you will get the resurrection passive called Field Physician, where if you do res someone during that channeling resurrection, you will actually take 15% less damage. 44 points into Warlord to reduce the cost of break free. 75 points into Tenacity, 75 points into Arcanist, so we get a 14% recovery bonus and return from heavy attacks, which is really handy. You can go to 100 in here to get a 15% bonus, but I honestly don't think it's worth 1% for 25 whole points. If you do this for both of these, you go all the way to 100, you get 1% for each, which is a bit crap, and now you've got no points for Warlord at all. I would rather take this. Also, 76 points into Tumbling, same as all the rest of my builds. I do dodge roll occasionally, especially in Maelstrom and stuff like that. Or even some trial mechanics, you have to dodge roll quite a bit. So I like to put a lot of reduction to cost into that, but you only really need 72 points in here. If you want to, you can put some in here and some in Shadow Ward to reduce the cost of blocks as well, or put more into Warlord. It's up to you. But the reason I go over 75 in this tree, you only have to go to 75, but I go over, is to get the Treasure Hunter passive as well. So I don't actually get any negative effects, but I do get better loot out of chests. 61 points into Elfborn. We have a high crit chance, and we need to make sure that when we do crit, we crit really hard. So our Beast Trap gives us a bonus, and also this does as well. 64 points into Elemental Expert, increasing all of the damage that we do by 13%, excluding our Beast Trap, because that's physical. 10 points into Spell Erosion. Now, if you count up all of the penetrating values that we have in our passives and our sharpened weapon and possibly buffs and debuffs in your own group and trial situations, you may slightly overcap if you have everything. But also consider that buffs and debuffs do have downtimes. So during the downtimes, you will fill the gap, so you won't necessarily drop too much negative damage. And of course, in AoE situations, all of the targets you're up against will not be debuffed as much as the main target, especially if people are using crushers and stuff like that, because crushers only affect one target. So if there's a crusher on the boss, it's not on the ads. So if you do have slightly higher penetration, then at least you can fill that gap and do much more AoE damage than you would do normally. So this is why we have 10 points into spell penetration. But if you find that you're way over in the situations that you're in, perhaps there's a lot of single target stuff and you're always up on your buffs and stuff, you can drop this down a little bit if you want. But it's perfect as it is for most content. 51 points into Master at Arms, increasing all of our direct damage, and we have lots of that, especially with our light attacks, our heavy attacks, and our Flames of Oblivion. Also increasing our light and heavy attacks further by an extra 6% by putting 9 points into Staff Expert. Now, 75 points into Thaumaturge will not only increase all of our damage over time, which we do have quite a lot of, by 23%, but the extra points, which puts us slightly over 23, which won't benefit you, by the way, in terms of this actual passive, will in fact open up Exploiter, meaning any damage to any targets that are off balance will be increased by 10%. Not only does our whip have a bonus passive when something's off balance to give us more damage, but it does even more now that we have this as well. Before, I didn't used to stack into this too much on DKs specifically, but since we've got an abundance of CPs now, I can actually take advantage of this without losing too much in here. Okay, now to the rotation. First of all, make sure your Beast Trap is down, and make sure your Flames of Oblivion is up. Every time you enter a fight, you need this active already. As you'll notice, when I run up to a target, it doesn't fire at it. The only time it fires is if any of the enemies are aggressed, so if they are in combat. So keep this up, Beast Trap down. As soon as your Beast Trap is down, swap bars, Eruption, Light Attack Breath, Light Attack Wall of Elements, swap bars. Now, on your front bar, you will do Light Attack, Burning Embers, then Light Attack and 4 whips. But if you are slower on your rotations or you're not too comfortable with your sustain, do 3 instead. But 4 is perfect. Once the 4 whips are done, Beast Trap, swap back to the back bar. Now, remember our back bar rotation was Eruption, Light, Breath, Light, Wall, swap. Every second rotation, you do not cast Eruption. It lasts 18 seconds. You don't need to cast that twice. Leave that running, and instead, this time, Flames of Oblivion, Light Breath, Light Wall, swap. Front bar, Burning Embers, 4 whips, Beast Trap, swap, Eruption, Light Breath, Light Wall, swap. Again, Burning Embers, 4 whips, Beast swap, no Eruption, Flames of Oblivion instead. Breath, Wall, swap. So every second rotation, you change it. So it's Eruption for the first rotation, Flames of Oblivion for the second. Eruption for the first, Flames of Oblivion for the second. If that's too much to handle, I told you already you can take Flames of Oblivion off, replace it with Inner Light, never press it, and just make sure that every back bar rotation, you only do this once every second rotation. So you can, like I said, turn this off. Flames of Oblivion first, not Flames of Oblivion, sorry. Flames of Oblivion off. Eruption down, Breath down, Wall down, swap, do your front bar stuff, whip, 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 Beast Trap swap, no Eruption, Breath, Wall, swap. There's your 2 options. Now, of course, if you are struggling with your sustain, you shouldn't be in most situations because it is generally covered by most group buffs that you tend to have, especially if you're getting Ellie Drain and all that good stuff. But if you are struggling, you are getting a little low, then don't worry. You can, of course, change your front bar rotation. Instead of 4 whips, just do a heavy whip, then another heavy whip, then Beast Trap swap. So instead of light attack and 4 whips, so light whip, light whip, light whip, light whip, instead of 4 of those, just do 2 with heavies, and you should be just fine. If you get to around sort of 40-30% Magicka and you're on your front bar and your sustain's going down quite a bit, you're not getting any bubbles or synergies or anything like that, then you might need to do a heavy attack rotation a couple of times occasionally. Don't panic too much if that happens. You won't lose a massive amount of DPS and you will get your sustain back, especially during off-balance periods. If you can off-balance heavy attack and then whip while the off-balance is running, that will cost your whip half the price as well, so you benefit either way. Now, just to show you what that looks like in full swing, we'll have these running. Beast Trap down. Always keep your potions up. Don't just cast them or use them when you're low. 4 whips. Swap with a Beast Trap. Oblivion. Flames. Wall. Swap. Embers, 4 whips. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Beast trap swap. Eruption this time. Then breath. Then wall. You get where I'm going with it. It takes a bit of practice, especially weaving the light attacks. You must get a light attack before every ability, or after every ability, whichever way you want to look at it. But the trick is to time it. So something that I do with a whip to actually help with timing, because there is a global cooldown between skills, there is a global cooldown between light attacks, but you can fill the gap between them with each other. Sometimes it helps to double tap the whip. Doing this will actually deliberately push you into that half-second timer where you can't really do anything. So if you light attack, double whip, you will by default time it perfectly. But that takes a bit of practice, but that's just a little tip I can give you for that one. Now, I'm going to show you a quick skeleton kill. This does have elemental drain, which I do apply on all Magicka DPS tests. If it's stamina, I apply a taunt from a tank so that major fracture is present, because some classes have it anyway. And if it's a Magicka, I apply major breach. Most people tend to use elemental drain, simulating some form of sustain as well. So fine, we'll use that. And in the meantime, we've also applied a little bit of off balance every so often to make sure that we can keep that uptime and show you or demonstrate the effectiveness of the whips. So we've got a little bit of off balance, and we've also got the elemental drain. Here we go. Now, of course, that was with the Zahn helmet. You can actually get a little bit more than that. You can push to like 51, 52. But if you use Groftar, it's only about 1k under. Groftar is normally hitting between 49 and 50. Now, of course, if you wanted to, you can drop Burning Spellweave for Sororia. If you can get yourself a Flame Staff of Sororia and then the body or jewelry pieces of whichever this has taken place in, you can replace this instead. You will get a bit more damage out of it, but it's a lot harder to balance because you have to stay in the AoE all the time, and a lot of people can't manage to keep that bonus up during mechanics, which means you'll actually have a negative amount of DPS regardless of what you hit on the skeleton. So this is the major setup for it, but if you want to alter it, then you're more than welcome to. So hopefully that helped, hopefully that wasn't too boring, hopefully you now have a better understanding of how to run this particular build, and hopefully you have a lot of fun with it. So, first of all, thank you all very much for watching. I hugely appreciate the support, and if you're not subscribing, please do hit that button. It is free. Furthermore, if you want to help support outside the channel, there are some links in the description for Patreon, Twitter, Facebook, and of course the website XynodeGaming.com. Don't forget also, I do live stream almost every night from 10 PM UK time on Twitch as well, and the link is in the description for that. Once again, thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.